Senate Judiciary Committee will resume, and next up is the Senator from Arkansas, Senator Cotton, for opening statement.
I welcome Judge Jackson and her family, and I congratulate her on her nomination. This is an important occasion. The Biden administration is waging a war on the rule of law, the separation of powers, and the Constitution. The lawlessness of the administration highlights the importance of judges who faithfully apply the law. To understand the ongoing power grab, let's consider President Biden's failed nominee to lead the Departments of Justice, ATF. The man he nominated can only be described as an anti-gun zealot. Thanks to the courage of some of my Democratic colleagues, that nominee was withdrawn. But it's disturbing that the president was ever willing to nominate someone who planned to shred the Second Amendment and ban virtually every modern hunting rifle in America. Just a few weeks ago, the Biden administration tried to twist the authority of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, a relatively obscure agency designed to regulate things like ladder safety on construction sites, and use it as a weapon to force virtually every American to choose between getting vaccinated or losing their livelihood. Thankfully, the Supreme Court struck down that unlawful power grab. Or look at the southern border, where Joe Biden and his Secretary of Homeland Security steadfastly refused to enforce our laws. As a result, 2 million illegal aliens streamed across our borders just last year. And less than 6 months ago, the Attorney General of the United States, himself a former judge, ordered that federal prosecutors, the FBI, and even the National Security Division of the Department of Justice be mobilized against parents who dared question the entrenched teachers' unions who are poisoning their children with racist vitriol known as critical race theory. As Justice Scalia was fond of saying, every banana republic has a Bill of Rights, but it's nothing more than a parchment barrier without free and fair elections, without separated powers, without the rule of law, and without an independent judiciary to uphold it all. Perhaps recognizing what Justice Scalia meant, the progressive left is not just threatening the rights of Americans, but our very system of constitutional government. Those on the left, including some of my colleagues here in the Senate, including on this committee, want to pack the Supreme Court. I would hope that anyone nominated to the court would have no problem echoing the words of Justice Ginsburg and Justice Breyer. Both of these liberal lions have said that expanding the Supreme Court to achieve favored legal and political outcomes is a dangerous idea, and that the court should have 9 justices and no more. But for some, political outcomes on the court are exactly their goal. The Democratic leader, Senator Schumer, stood on the steps of the Supreme Court almost exactly 2 years ago and yelled at specific justices, quote, "You have unleashed the whirlwind and you will pay the price," and added, quote, "You won't know what hits you if you go forward with these awful decisions," end quote. The Chief Justice rightly condemned these words. Again, I hope any nominee to the court would be comfortable condemning these words from Senator Schumer as well. The Supreme Court is not the only constitutional limit on power that the left would like to destroy. The Associate Attorney General of the United States has said that she believes that every single American, and every single institution in this country are inherently racist, and the very concepts of the rule of law and equal justice for all are actually, quote, code words. That's what she said, code words for some kind of twisted, secret racism. These threats to the rule of law are not merely theoretical. We are witnessing a breakdown of society. There are many Americans who no longer feel safe today. Parents are scared to walk down the streets that used to be free from crime. In 2020, anarchists, rioters, and left-wing street militias raged across the country, and murders increased at the fastest rate in history. And in the first year of the Biden administration, violent crime got even worse. It's no coincidence that this violence came as localities and states pushed to defund the police and reduce the punishment for criminals. Career criminals are committing violent crimes and going free under the guise of a supposedly more equitable justice system. And liberal judges who have more sympathy for the victimizers than for the victims are a big part of the problem. The Biden administration is committed to these soft-on-crime policies, like ending cash bail to create a catch-and-release system for violent criminals. Progressive Soros prosecutors who are supported by the Biden administration have nullified entire sections of law to destroy our criminal justice system from within. The consequences are obvious. Skyrocketing violent crime, emboldened gangs, and drug overdoses reaching numbers never before seen in American history. If Judge Jackson is confirmed, her decisions will have a direct impact on the safety of the American people. So we're going to look at her past decisions and her statements, because the best predictor of future performance is past performance. That brings us to today. We're asked to determine whether the president's nominee to the Supreme Court is able and willing to meet these vital challenges. I enjoyed meeting with Judge Jackson last week in my office. We had a good conversation, and over the next few days, I'll have many more questions. Let's be clear about this. The confirmation hearing is not a test of how well nominees can filibuster or how many questions they can avoid answering. It's true that there is a tradition of avoiding any stances on how one might rule in specific cases if confirmed, and there's good reason for that. But that's not a license to refuse to discuss one's views of the law, how one would go about conducting legal interpretation, or one's philosophy as a judge. Judge Jackson isn't nominated to be a district judge or a circuit judge this time around, so it is not enough to say that she will approach things with integrity and fairness and faithfully apply precedents set by higher courts. Just as you wouldn't hire a teacher who refused to say anything about their teaching philosophy other than that they would look at the curriculum and appropriately teach the students, it's not enough to say only that one would look at the facts and arguments in the case and fairly apply the law. That wouldn't tell us anything about how one plans to do the job, how one interprets the law, how one understands our Constitution. It's no secret that I voted against Judge Jackson's nomination to the circuit court last year, but I want to give her the opportunity to show why I should vote for her this time. So I want to be clear about what would convince me to support any Supreme Court nominee. I'm looking for a justice who will uphold the Constitution, not use it to invent new so-called rights. I'm looking for a justice who understands that the Constitution means what it says and does not mean what it doesn't say. Someone who understands that it is not up to 9 unaccountable, unelected politicians in black robes to decide some new evolving meaning of the Constitution based on public opinion polling or views of the legal elite. I'm looking for a justice who realizes that a so-called living Constitution really means that the Constitution is dead. Instead, we should have an enduring Constitution, as Justice Scalia contended. I'm looking for a justice who understands that there is a process for updating the Constitution, and that process is by amending the Constitution. I will not support anyone who seeks to rewrite the Constitution from the bench, rather than through our constitutional amendment process. I'm looking for a justice who understands that nobody is above the law and will not coddle criminals or put illegal aliens ahead of American citizens. I'm looking for a justice who will protect the right to life of innocent infants instead of caving to the abortion lobby, creating whole new swaths of law out of whole cloth. I'm looking for a justice who will make decisions based on the law, not based on their personal experiences or preferences, not on empathy, not on desired political outcomes, but on the law and the Constitution. If Judge Jackson is confirmed, her job will be simple. Leave the legislating to Congress and to elected, accountable office holders in our states and our municipalities. Zealously protect the separation of powers and don't overturn laws unless they violate the Constitution. I look forward to these hearings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Cotton. Senator Booker of New Jersey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Judge, Your Honor, it's very good to see you. Forgive me, when you were in my office, you were focused on the hearings and a lot of the substance and had such great questions. I could not stop being just joyous that you were sitting in my office, and I couldn't stop bringing up to you the historical nature of this. Forgive me, I grew up in a small black church where I was taught to make a joyous noise unto the Lord. And this is not a normal day for America. We have never had this moment before. And I just want to talk about the joy. I know tomorrow in the coming hearings we're going to have tough, hard questions, but please let me just acknowledge the fact that this is not normal. It's never happened before. The Senate is poised right now to break another barrier. We are on the precipice of shattering another ceiling, another glass ceiling. It's a sign that we as a country are continuing to rise to our collective cherished highest ideals. I just feel this sense of overwhelming joy as I see you sitting there, as I see your family sitting behind you. You know, the greatness of America is that these imperfect geniuses at our founding founded a nation different than any before in human history. It wasn't because we all prayed the same or looked the same. They put forth in a constitution the best hopes for humanity. And the story of America, I think, is a testimony to this world of what diverse people can achieve. It's been said by so many of my colleagues about the fact that we have had 115 Supreme Court justices, and we shouldn't diminish the accomplishments of mostly these 108 white men. They were extraordinary patriots who helped shape this country. But now we are seeing to the highest court in our land a hopeful day like this, that so many of the people, so much of the rich talent of our nation who could not scarcely ever dream of sitting on the Supreme Court, now we are showing that we will indeed go deep into the waters of our nation and pull forth the best talent. Extraordinary legal talent comes from all backgrounds. I know that in our nation, for the 200 plus years of our history, there have been extraordinarily talented Black people, men and women, Muslim men and women from the founding of our nation. We've seen extraordinary indigenous men and women, all who probably could have added to the greatness of our courts, but they were denied that opportunity. I believe we say these words, justice for all, but there are many of people who feel those words have been diminished by the lack of representation, the lack of avenues for talented people to ascend to our courts. But fortunately, thanks to the sacrifices of all Americans, people on both sides of the political aisle, we have begun to see more and more diverse Americans slowly get on to our federal courts. My family celebrated that. I was born in 1969, the year that President Johnson nominated Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American to serve on the Supreme Court. It shook the wonderful foundations of our nations, and he became a symbol to all of us, Black and white, of what a Supreme Court justice can be. And then Ronald Reagan, 1981, roughly 200 plus years since the founding of our nation, put Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. That was not a normal moment. It was a moment to rejoice. And now we've seen President Obama put Justice Sonia Sotomayor, the first Hispanic, on the court. And what I'm seeing in this Congress, my colleagues and I, doing is we are opening the doors of diverse talent to our federal courts in ways we've never seen before. Think about this. President Biden has nominated the first ever Article III Muslim judge to our federal courts. He nominated the first openly LGBTQ woman to serve on our federal courts. He nominated Native American and Asian American candidates who have appeared before this committee, incredibly talented individuals worthy of their positions, now act in roles to the benefit of our whole nation. They herald the truth of who we are as a country, an inclusive, multicultural nation that shows the world the promise of a true democracy. In all, over 2/3 of the confirmed judges under the Biden administration have come from groups who historically have not been represented on our federal courts. So for those reasons and more, today to me is a day of joy. I cannot tell you how happy I am. Today, we should rejoice because President Biden nominated someone that we've heard to be the 116th Associate Judge of the Supreme Court, who is extraordinarily talented and who also happens to be a Black woman, something we've never seen before. Judge Jackson's nomination breaks an artificially confining mold of our past and opens up a more promising, potential-filled future for us all as Americans. It signals that this nation will draw more deeply from all of our talent and genius that will benefit all Americans. This is the America that most of our families speak of from all our diverse backgrounds, an America where anybody can achieve anything, not because of the color of their skin, but because of the content of their character. And God, I can't wait for America to find out more about your character. When the next generation behind us looks at the highest courts in the land, this ideal will be made more real in even just the faces of the nine. You bring this wealth of experience that's exciting to me. You've seen so many parts of our legal system. But I just want to talk about your role as a public defender, because that too is unprecedented. I have a friend that just was at the prayer breakfast here in Congress, Brian Stevenson. He has this saying, he says, we have a justice system that treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. I'm not sure if most Americans know that 80% of those who go before our nation's criminal courts can't afford an attorney. To this end, a public defender should be looked at as one of the most honorable roles within our judicial system, and yet we have never had a public defender or anyone who served as a public defender on our highest court. And it, unfortunately, is very lacking amongst all federal judges. You wrote, Judge, that the role of the public defender made you a better judge. You said it gave you a chance to, quote, help people in need and to promote core constitutional values. Well, the Sixth Amendment right to the assistance of counsel is guaranteed regardless of wealth and despite the nature of the accusations. I honor that more than you know as someone who started in legal clinics at Yale. I had my empathy expanded. I had my understanding of the struggles of my fellow Americans in ways that shaped my entire professional career. I love the fact that you have been a bridge builder in so many ways. You have the support of Republican-appointed judges and Democratic-appointed judges. Heck, you were confirmed by the Senate in a bipartisan manner 3 times. I love the fact that you have the support of civil rights lawyers and our largest police organizations like the FOP. It is a testimony to what this nation needs more of. People that will find ways not to accentuate the lines that divide, but try to find more ties that bind us together. Let me go one note more personal. Back to you sitting in my office. I can't tell you how before our meeting, how many people reached out to me with very emotional moments. You know, my mom's deltas. I heard from many Lynx sisters. I cannot tell you what it meant to me. So when you came to my office, rarely, I was a little kind of nervous even. And then you started talking about your family and your parents. I want to tell your parents, you and I have something in common. We're both around the same age. Both of our parents graduated from HBCUs. My dad, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown, is also an Eagle. He went to North Carolina Central just like you. And they came to D.C. My mom worked in the D.C. public schools, Mr. Brown, just like you. And your story, the more you talked, Americans from all backgrounds know what it is to be underestimated and looked down upon when they told you were too ambitious for wanting to go to Harvard. You were a mom that faced career challenges at your private law firm. How many women can relate to that? The more you spoke about your personal story, the more I know it is an American story that folks from all backgrounds can relate to. But there's something that really moved me. Behind you and your family is your daughter, Layla. And when she was 11 years old, I love this, she wrote a letter to President Obama urging him to nominate her mother, you, to the United States Supreme Court. Wow. And in that letter, her recommendation put forward that you, Judge Jackson, would be, quote, a great Supreme Court justice. I suspect after these proceedings, and please God, after your confirmation of the Supreme Court, something new will happen in America. That letter from your daughter will not be exceptional. generations of little young girls and generations of little young boys, no matter who their parents are, will have the audacity to write the President of the United States, whether they're daughters of white parents or black parents or biracial parents or Muslim and Jewish parents, Sikh or Hindu parents. We're going to see a new generation of children talking about their mamas and daring to write to the President of the United States of America that my mom should be on the Supreme Court. Well, I want to tell your daughter right now that that dream of hers is so close to being a reality, some tough days ahead, but I think it could happen. And your grandparents' generation, literally this week back in 1965, when my parents were in Washington, D.C., and that week, there was a man named Martin Luther King who began on this day a march from Selma to Montgomery. And when he finally made it on the 25th of March, he talked to people who were losing faith in America that we can be who we say we are. And he says, for those folks, how long will we have to wait? Not long, because the arc of the moral universe is long and it bends towards justice. Well, today, America is witnessing the literal bending of the arc and the conducting of one of the most sacred ideals of this country, justice for all. I think more people at the end of these hearings and after a Senate vote, more people will believe that we can be the nation we say we are when we put our hand on our heart. Indeed, I think you and your family are giving a lot more people faith that we will achieve a nation of liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Booker. Senator Kennedy of Louisiana.
Hello, Judge. If you are a lawyer or an American, I guess it doesn't get any bigger or better than this. Congratulations. In addition to honoring the wonderful state of Minnesota, and unless you correct me, I am going to assume that your purple attire is also meant to honor LSU in my state. And if I squint real hard, I might call it Marion blue, the colors of my Southern University in Louisiana. I want to compliment you and the Biden White House for selecting Senator Doug Jones to advise you. Senator Jones knows the Senate, and the Senate knows Senator Jones. And we know him to be quite the intellect, but more important, we know him to be a person of good judgment and goodwill. And I'm glad that you've been listening to him. I hope we will be able to use this hearing today to talk about, if not implicitly, at least implicitly, two subjects. The first is the legitimacy of the United States Supreme Court. Where does the court get its legitimacy? What can we do to enhance it? Judicial legitimacy is important. I don't need to tell you that. I'm rather fond of the Constitution. I know you are too. When members of the United States Supreme Court interpret it, I want the American people to believe them. I want the American people to say, well, I may not agree, but the men and women who made that decision are intellectually honest and people of good faith. One of the primary roles of the United States Supreme Court is to uphold the rule of law. And sometimes justices have to uphold the rule of law when it's not popular. Sometimes justices have to uphold the rule of law when it's not popular with the majority of Americans. Boy, that's tough. It's also important. Sometimes, not generally, but sometimes the majority can mean that just all the fools are on the same side. And that's what the courts are for. And I'm rather fond of the Bill of Rights, too, and I know you are as well. I've never believed that the Bill of Rights was there for the high school quarterback or the prom queen. They're covered by it. But the Bill of Rights is there to protect the rights of people who don't see the world exactly like everybody else, or who don't look exactly like everybody else. Now, unfortunately, through history, we have had people, some well-intentioned, who tried to delegitimize the Supreme Court. We had a president way back when who tried to impeach a Supreme Court justice. We had another president who wanted to pack the court. I remember the impeach Earl Warren signs during the Warren Court. And most of the people who want to delegitimize the Supreme Court believe that unlike our founders, in my judgment, believe that that members of the Supreme Court ought to be and are politicians in robes. They believe that the United States Supreme Court ought to be a mini Congress. They believe that the law is not the law. The law is supposed to just be politics practiced in a different way. And they believe in court packing. And they're wrong. Number two, I hope today that we can use this as an opportunity to talk about, if not explicitly, at least implicitly, that's what I'm going to try to do, the appropriate balance between representative government and declarative government. Now, in representative government, as you well know, people, through their elected representatives, make policy. In declarative government, policy is made by the unelected, the administrative state, and the federal judiciary. Now, both are important. Both are important. I'm not saying this is a zero-sum game or either or. What's just as important is we have the appropriate balance between representative government and what I'll call declarative government. I mean, we have an administrative state. Did any of us ever think it would get this big? Is that healthy? We need to ask ourselves that. Is it really healthy to arrive at a circumstance where the administrative state passes 35 laws a year to our one? Is it really healthy to have an administrative state that makes its own laws, interprets its own laws, and enforces its own laws before courts with respect to which the administrative state appoints the judges? I think that's a fair question to ask. In terms of with respect to declarative government in the Supreme Court and the federal judiciary, federal judges have enormous power. They have to, but they do. They have enormous power. You're appointed for life. You can't be unelected. Your salary can't even be reduced. And you have to have that power. Judicial power is important. So is judicial restraint. I believe that the appropriate role of the federal judiciary is the following. Federal judges don't make law. They don't tell us what the law ought to be. They tell us what the law is. Now, I said primarily because, of course, sometimes federal judges make law. I mean, make the law of the case. You decide a case. You have to tell us what reasonable means in terms of searches and seizures. You have to help us define restraint of trade after we pass a statute. So, of course, judges make law. But I'm talking about the proper balance. I'll leave you with these last thoughts, and then I'll yield back my time. I want you to hear the words of one of, in my opinion, is one of our most distinguished Supreme Court justices. I'm going to read his words. The American people love democracy, and the American people are not fools. The people know their value judgments are quite as good as those taught in any law school, maybe better. Value judgments, after all, should be voted on, not dictated. I look forward, Judge, to getting to know you better. And congratulations, Mom and Dad.
Thanks, Senator Kennedy. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judge Jackson, welcome back to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Now, the last time you were before us, just less than a year ago, I recall that you mentioned that every once in a while you make it a point to walk a few blocks from your courthouse to the National Archives. Now, as we all know, the National Archives is where the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights are housed. You shared that you go there and reflect on the momentousness of the office that you hold. And it's a fitting place, these archives, to be reminded of our nation's highest ideals, our pursuit of a union that is more fair, that is more free, and that is striving to be more perfect. It's also a place to see how for 2.5 centuries, our democracy has remained a work in progress. And that it's incumbent upon all of us, yes, as a nation, but each of us as individuals to continue making that progress. Now, the men who wrote our founding documents could never have imagined that you would one day be here. A former public defender, a proud graduate of a public high school, a working mom, and yes, the first black woman nominated to serve on the nation's highest court. Colleagues, our founding fathers also could never have imagined that the senators sitting before Judge Jackson would include the first women to represent California, Hawaii, and Tennessee, the first Jewish man to represent Georgia, the first Hispanic man to represent Texas, the first black man to represent New Jersey. Nor could they have imagined that the list would include me. I'm here as a proud son of immigrants from Mexico who came to this country with little formal education, but with big dreams and a tremendous work ethic. And it's because of the decades of hard work and sacrifice by Santos and Lupe Padilla, my dad as a short order cook, my mom as a housekeeper, that I've enjoyed tremendous opportunities in my life. And that includes the honor of representing the state of California in the United States Senate and of being the first Latino to do so. So like so many of us in this room, I'm blessed to live the American dream. Now, looking around, you can see that the strides that our democracy has made towards strengthening our institutions by including more voices and more perspectives. Judge Jackson, if you're confirmed, we'll take another step towards making our government better reflect the America that it serves, towards making the promise of America more real. and we know that progress doesn't come easily. Breaking barriers and being the first means not just significant opportunity, but tremendous responsibility. But Judge Jackson, I also know that you're equipped with a tremendous record of experience and accomplishment, and you are ready to blaze this trail. A trail that your grandparents may have found unfathomable, but one that your daughters and my sons and future generations will now see as a natural part of the American story. Judge Jackson, even before your next opinion or dissent, your appearance before us today already begins a new chapter in our nation's history. And I can say for certain that by the end of these hearings, those watching across the country will know of your outstanding qualifications, your experience, and your accomplishments, which bear repeating over and over again. A public education, including graduating from Miami Palmetto High School. I see that smile. Followed by degrees from Harvard College and Harvard Law School, clerkships at the Federal District Court, the Federal Court of Appeals, and the United States Supreme Court. 2 years as a federal public defender. 2 years as a staff member of the United States Sentencing Commission, and 4 years as its vice chair. You've been confirmed by this Senate, not once, not twice, 3 times, each on a bipartisan basis, including 2 lifetime judicial appointments. And you bring nearly a decade of judicial experience, which, by the way, is more than the combined total of 4 of the currently sitting justices at the time they were nominated. So yes, you are clearly more than qualified to serve as a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. And yes, you bring a wealth of other important experiences and perspectives to the court, including as a working mother and as a Black woman. Now, in these hearings, I look forward to speaking further about your background, your experiences, both on and off the bench, and your approach to the law. But based on our conversations already and my review of your record, I believe you have the expertise, the insight, and the heart to elevate the weighty deliberations of the Supreme Court. Now, every year, the Supreme Court decides dozens of cases that shape the fundamental rights and lives of the American people. Only a small percentage of those cases will ever be highlighted in history books, make the front page of newspapers, or go viral on social media. But the choices of the Supreme Court will certainly shape the future of labor rights, voting rights, women's rights, criminal justice, immigration, technology, environmental protection, and so much more. I also want to be clear about something important. If you're confirmed, I don't expect to agree with every detail of every decision that you make. That's not my test. That is not our test. Our job on this committee is to make sure that the next justice will honor the rule of law and the principle of equal justice for all. We must ensure that the next justice will help the Supreme Court live up to its responsibility to the American people. And yes, America is watching. America is watching these hearings to see what the future holds, not just for themselves, but for the court as well. Judge Jackson, like you, I believe in the greatness and the promise of this nation. I believe that we can continue building on our dream of a more perfect union, and that includes building a government that better reflects and represents the people that it serves. It's a dream that we've spent 2.5 centuries struggling to realize. And while this hearing may not be the last step on that journey, it is a momentous step forward indeed. Judge Jackson, you're an outstanding nominee for our nation's highest court. And I thank you for your service. And I thank you for sharing your faith in America's promise, a faith that is stronger because you know how far our nation has come. And Mr. Chair, before closing, and with your indulgence, I'd like to share a few words in Spanish on the importance of this nomination. La Corte Suprema decide docenas de casos cada año que afectan nuestras vidas y nuestros derechos fundamentales. Y esas decisiones afectarán el futuro de nuestro país a través de temas como el derecho al voto, inmigración, protección ambiental, derechos laborales y mucho más. Esta semana el Senado y el país verán lo preparada y calificada que está la jueza Jackson para la Corte Suprema. Espero escuchar más sobre la jueza y las perspectivas importantes y necesarias que traería a la Corte Suprema. Judge Jackson, I look forward to your testimony over the next few days, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Muchas gracias, Senator Padilla.
De nada.
Senator Tillis of North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. It's a real honor to now participate in my fourth Supreme Court nomination and confirmation process. And Judge Jackson, congratulations on your nomination. I do feel like you and your family have every reason to be very proud. And your daughter apparently has pretty weighty letter writing skills. When we met together, I wanted to thank you for the time that we spent together. I asked about your family. You beamed with pride. And I can understand why. You have parents, brothers, siblings, family members who are public servants themselves, and now you've gone on to do that, continue that legacy with in your public defender role and as a judge. You should be very proud of that. And we should also recognize the historic nature of this event. The first African-American female to be put forth for confirmation for the Supreme Court is quite extraordinary. I also want to recognize that when we had the meeting in my office, I asked you, why on earth are you doing this? Because this week is not going to be particularly fun, every moment of it. Why on earth are you doing this? I mean, you're brilliant, you're well-educated, you're studied in the law. There are so many other things that you could do. And you said that it really is the pinnacle of your profession, and that I guess in many respects this is a realization of a dream of yours, but I also think that it's probably putting within reach for many young boys and girls, young men and women, the reality that they too someday could be here before the Senate being considered for confirmation to the highest court in the land. So you're not only fulfilling your dreams, you're making the dreams of others appear to be within reach. I think as we go through this hearing this week, we're also going to get an opportunity to see the content of your character demonstrated. I, for one, think you have a strong track record of ethical values, honesty, integrity, respecting others, and endeavoring to be fair, just, and compassionate. You know, confirming a Supreme Court justice is one of the most important responsibilities I think I have as a U.S. Senator. The outcome of our decision will impact millions of lives and the very structure and the future of our constitutional republic. Supreme Court justices must find answers to some of the most pressing constitutional and legal questions of our time. They're confronted with complex questions. Many of them don't have good answers, or at least easy ones. That's why it's critical whenever we confirm a Supreme Court justice, we understand the nominee's judicial philosophy and then reconcile it with our conception of the best mindset to bring to the bench. In my opinion, a justice's job is to interpret the text and words of the Constitution as written and give them their original meaning. I reject the notion that the Constitution is a living evolutionary document that changes based on the impulses of 5 unelected justices. A good judge must understand that his or her job isn't to legislate from the bench and read in their preferred policy outcomes into statutes. If the words of a statute are clear, a good judge will reach a decision based on those words, and those words alone, even if it creates an outcome they may disagree with personally. In other words, In the words of Chief Justice Roberts, a good justice has one job, calling balls and strikes. Nothing more, nothing less. Sometimes that leads to rulings that Republicans like and Democrats hate. Other times it leads to rulings that Democrats like and Republicans hate. And sometimes it leads to rulings that everybody hates. But that's okay. That's really your job as a Supreme Court justice. I had the opportunity to meet Judge Jackson, I said earlier, and I also want to thank you for your indulgence. I may have done my interviews a little bit differently than other ones. I asked some questions, and then I had all my staff ask a number of questions. I was quite impressed with how engaged you were with some of the former members of the Judiciary Committee and other staff, and I even scared one person who was just on the job a week and a half, said, "You got a question for the Supreme Court Justice?" And he had a question. It was a good question, and you were very indulgent in your answer. I just thought you were honest and forthcoming. I wanted you to know that. I've said that in the press. I think that you have the right temperament, just based on how I've seen you react to the questions, or not the questions, but the statements today. And I also appreciate how your unique perspective, your upbringing, your family, and your experiences as a former public defender have shaped your views. As I noted during your confirmation in the Supreme Court, or to the Circuit Court, I do have some additional questions and concerns that I want to ask about to kind of weave together or reconcile my conception of the right mindset for a judge going to the Supreme Court. I'm concerned, and we'll look into questions over the next couple of days, and I will be here for the majority of the hearing to hear, to kind of put together the foundation that I need to ultimately make a decision on your confirmation. So as I proceed with the hearing this week, I'll be in attendance most of the time except for breaks, and I'll focus on better understanding your writings. I'm in the middle of your thesis right now. It should be finished by tomorrow morning. Your political activities and opinions with the goal of determining your philosophy and whether or not it fits with my conception of the right philosophy for somebody that I would vote to confirm. I'll listen thoroughly. I'll keep an open mind, as I do with every nominee before this committee. But at the end of the week, I'll ultimately have to conclude whether or not I'm comfortable with putting someone in a lifetime position and whether that person is likely to have the kind of philosophy that I want. I've told Justice Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Barrett that I hope and I expected that they would take opinions that would make me mad. And that's okay. I just want to know that they do it for the right reason. I don't want an activist at either end of the spectrum, although I think some folks are okay with one end of the spectrum, not the other. If we're talking about preserving the integrity of the court, there's no place on the Supreme Court for judicial activism. And the best thing that we can do here is make sure that we have justices that are going to be stewards of the Constitution, respectful of the measures that we pass out of here, and call those balls and strikes. So I look forward to the hearing tomorrow. You're going to get a lot of questions asked. I do thank all of my colleagues in advance for being respectful, thoughtful, and open-minded. And I look forward to hearing your opening statement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Tillis. Senator Ossoff, Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Grassley. Judge Jackson, good afternoon. Good afternoon to your family. Congratulations to your family. Congratulations to you for your nomination, and welcome back to the Judiciary Committee. I engage in these proceedings with deep respect for the responsibility that the Senate has to advise and consent on the lifetime appointment of a Supreme Court justice who would be responsible for interpreting and applying constitutional and statutory law in the most complex and contested and nationally significant cases. The Constitution was a groundbreaking document when written, and still by today's standards as amended, considering the tyranny that prevails in much of the world. Its guarantees of liberty and privacy and due process are exceptional as a governing document. Often in our history, it has fallen to the court through its decisions to ensure the enforcement of those guarantees. Yet our Constitution's guarantees of individual rights and equal protection under the law remain too often and for too many unfulfilled. For any colleagues who doubt this, I remind them of Ahmaud Arbery's murder in Glenn County, Georgia, just 2 years ago, when a young black man was shot dead in cold blood on camera in the street, and the local authorities buried the case and looked the other way. Only a massive civil rights mobilization pressured state and eventually federal prosecutors to act. For any colleagues who doubt that those promises remain unfulfilled to too many, I remind them that in my state, you can predict how long someone must wait to vote by where they live and the color of their skin. In practice, the promises made in the plain text of our Constitution are still too often broken for too many of our fellow Americans. And so the court remains essential to that national process of becoming in real life what America is in text. Today's hearing, Judge Jackson, is evidence that this process continues, and above all, a testament to you personally, that in a nation still striving to transcend the legacies of slavery and segregation and institutionalized racism, through your brilliance and resilience and hard work, you have already rendered great service to the nation as a federal judge. And as a black woman, you have overcome deeply rooted obstacles to earn nomination to our nation's highest court for the first time in history. Alongside our Constitution's exceptional guarantees of individual rights and equal protection is its exceptional system of checks and balances. Restraints on political power imposed by the diffusion of authority across three co-equal branches between federal and state governments, with the president and a federal legislature directly accountable to voters and an independent federal judiciary whose judges must be confirmed by elected senators. This constitutional system has endured and developed for nearly a quarter of a millennium. It is resilient. But democracy remains the exception, not the norm, in history and around the world, and we cannot take the survival of our republic for granted. And so I look forward to engaging with you, Judge Jackson, to discuss your perspective on the separation of powers and the resilience of our Constitution when threatened by political actors who would ignore the rule of law or seek to seize power by illegal or extraordinary means. Among the court's most challenging tasks are to grapple with unsettled law when the stakes are highest or even existential for individuals and for the country, and to apply the Constitution faithfully over the long arc of history as the world changes in profound ways and the text of faithful constitutional interpretation meets new facts, new contexts, and new technologies. Judge Jackson, should you be confirmed, you may serve as a Supreme Court justice well into the middle of this century. You will rule on cases whose contours and complexity we cannot yet imagine. And so among several areas of interest, I look forward to learning how you will consider protections against unreasonable search and seizure in an age of ubiquitous surveillance, how you might approach disputes over war powers, where law remains unsettled between executive and legislative claims, how you will approach questions pertaining to freedoms of speech and of the press, and seek that confirmation that you will apply the law faithfully without regard for your own opinions, as my review of your extensive work to date demonstrates that I believe you will. This constitutional process of advice and consent is vital to the integrity and legitimacy of the court. And Judge Jackson, on behalf of my constituents in Georgia, I look forward to engaging in this process with you and my colleagues. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you, Senator Ossoff. Senator Blackburn of Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Jackson, welcome. You are indeed to be congratulated and your entire family with you, and thank you for your time to visit. I appreciated so much that. And to your daughters, her best job is being mama. She likes that one. And but we've talked today a little bit about the momentous occasion that this is and bringing you forward, and indeed it is, because unlike any other federal office, this is a lifetime appointment. And the decisions that you're going to make are going to impact rights and freedoms of every single American citizen. And, you know, President Biden thinks you're the right person for the job, but it doesn't end there. We do have that role of advice and consent. And it is up to us to carry that job out. So, as you have heard repeatedly, this is going to be a fair and very thorough and very respectful hearing, and we're going to work through this process with some tough questions, but do it in a manner, the respect that you deserve. And we've talked some today about the treatment of Justice Thomas and Justice Kavanaugh. Justice Barrett, who was questioned about her faith and whether that made her suitable for the court. And I know your faith is important to you. We've also talked some about Janice Rogers Brown and the treatment that she endured here. So we are going to be pleased to move forward and focus on the issues that the American people want to focus on, because they want to know about you and how you're going to approach your job and the decisions that you have made in the past, what you've written, what you have said. And I've got a few areas that I'm going to want to delve a little bit further with you. And we touched on some of these as we talked. Right now, when I talk to Tennesseans, one of the most important things that they bring up is the issue of parental rights and wanting to be able to rear their children as they see fit. And moms and dads are very concerned about this progressive agenda that is being pushed in some of our public schools. Educators are allowing biological males to steal opportunities from female athletes in the name of progressivism. Just last week, an entire generation of young girls watched as those charged with protecting them allowed a biological male to compete and beat a biological woman at the highest level of collegiate sports. Some girls have been forced to share locker rooms with biological males. Rather than defending our girls, those in power are teaching them that their voices don't matter. They're being treated like second-class citizens. And Americans need a Supreme Court justice who will protect our children and will defend parents' constitutional right to decide what is best for their own kids. And here we need a little clarity. At a time when these parental rights appear to be under assault by the radical left, your public comments about, and I'm going to quote you, the transformative power of progressive education, end quote. These are deeply concerning. You serve on the board of a school that teaches kindergartners, 5-year-old children, that they can choose their gender and teaches them about so-called white privilege. This school has hosted an organization called Woke Kindergarten and pushes an anti-racist education program for white families. Your public endorsement of this type progressive indoctrination of our children causes one great concern when it comes to how you may rule on cases involving parental rights. Parents also know that it's only a matter of time before we have the next pandemic, and they're concerned about more mask mandates or lockdowns from unelected bureaucrats that would harm their children's mental health and stunt their development. The American people want a Supreme Court justice who will protect their families' freedoms not allow government overreach into private family decisions. Now, moms that I'm speaking with raise the issue of crime, and you've consistently called for greater freedom for hardened criminals. At the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, you advocated, and again I quote, for each and every criminal defendant in the D.C. Department of Corrections custody should be released. That would have been 1,500 criminals back on the street if you had had your way. And you used the COVID-19 pandemic as justification to release a fentanyl drug dealer, a bank robber addicted to heroin, and a convict who murdered a U.S. Marshal into our communities. But your efforts to protect convicts began long before the pandemic. You used your time and talent not to serve our nation's veterans or other vulnerable groups, but to provide free legal services to help terrorists get out of Gitmo and go back to the fight. You also have a consistent pattern of giving child porn offenders lighter sentences. On average, you sentence child porn defendants to over 5 years below the minimum sentence recommended by the sentencing guidelines. And you have stated publicly that it is a mistake to assume that child pornography offenders are pedophiles. Your philosophy, it appears, is backward on these issues, restrictions on children and families and freedom for criminals. In fact, your philosophy, or lack thereof, may be the root of the problem here. I was concerned during our conversation earlier this month when you told me that you really didn't have a judicial philosophy. The American people deserve a Supreme Court justice with a documented commitment to the text of the Constitution and the rule of law, not a judicial activist who will attempt to make policy from the bench. Without a judicial philosophy, a judge is legally adrift and will be inclined to consider policy rather than law. You once wrote that every judge has, and I quote, personal hidden agendas, end quote, that influence how they decide cases. So I can only wonder, what's your hidden agenda? Is it to let violent criminals, cop killers, and child predators back to the streets? Is it to restrict parental rights and expand government's reach into our schools and our private family decisions? Is it to support the radical left's attempt to pack the Supreme Court? You have praised the 1619 Project, which argues the U.S. is a fundamentally racist country, and you have made clear that you believe judges must consider critical race theory when deciding how to sentence criminal defendants. Is it your personal hidden agenda to incorporate critical race theory into our legal system? These are answers that the American people need to know. So we are going to look at past statements and decisions and seek clarification from this committee before we make our decisions. So let me close again by congratulating you on your impressive career and your nomination to the nation's highest court. Regardless of the outcome of the confirmation process, you and your family should be incredibly proud of all that you have achieved. Your story is a wonderful example of the American dream fulfilled. You are able to sit here today because you were reared and built your career in a free country whose laws protect equal justice and opportunity for all, to ensure that future generations can expect the same blessings and opportunities you receive. We need justices who will be dedicated to justice and the rule of law. Our questions to you over the coming days are going to be tough, but they're tough by necessity because it is our duty to determine whether you will, first and foremost, uphold the Constitution and our nation's founding principles. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. All committee members have now completed their opening statements. At this point in time, we're going to have a little shuffle of the logistics, and I'll ask that the two introducers please come forward to the witness table. Judge Jackson, you can take a brief rest from the glare of the spotlight. We're fortunate today to have two distinguished guests introducing Judge Jackson. We will hear from Judge Thomas Griffith, who served as a judge on the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the District D.C. Circuit from 2005 to 2020, and Professor Lisa Fairfax, who serves as a presidential professor and co-director of the Institute for Law and Economics at the University of Pennsylvania Carey Law School. Judge Griffith, we will start with you. Make sure your microphone is turned on. There's a red button.
How's that?
Been a while since you've been here. So
okay. Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I come here today as a retired federal appeals court judge with 15 years of experience on the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. I come here as a jurist appointed by Republican President George W. Bush. And I come here as someone who understands that there are few greater responsibilities under the Constitution than serving as a justice on the United States Supreme Court. It takes a jurist of high character, keen intellect, deep legal knowledge, and broad experience to ensure that the judiciary plays its unique role under the Constitution to uphold the rule of law impartially and not to be, in the words of Justice Stephen Breyer, partisans in robes. Today, I have the high honor to introduce Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, a jurist who has all of those qualities. When President Biden introduced her to the nation a little over 3 weeks ago, the American people caught their first glimpse of Judge Jackson's character. You may recall that she began her remarks with an expression of her faith in God and her gratitude for this nation, which she rightly observed is the greatest beacon of hope and democracy the world has ever known. I first met Judge Jackson in 2013 after the Senate had confirmed her nomination to the federal district court as a trial judge. 8 years later, she joined the D.C. Circuit as an appellate judge after another Senate confirmation. I've had many opportunities to review her work and observe her work over the years as a judge, and on several occasions, I reviewed her decisions on appeal. Although we did not always agree on the outcome the law required, I respected her diligent and careful approach, her deep understanding, and her collegial manner, indispensable traits for success as a justice on the Supreme Court. About her collegial manner, that important feature of the justice's work is often overlooked. Although appointed by different presidents, the justices have genuine fondness and respect for one another. We saw some of that in their expressions of admiration and love for Justice Breyer when he announced his retirement. The civil manner in which the justices debate the large and vexing issues before them is vital not only to the success of the Supreme Court, but to the success of our nation. The Constitution requires that of all of us. It goes without saying that civility of debate and respect for the differing views of others are sorely lacking from our public life. Judge Jackson's life has modeled these qualities. Perhaps most important, Judge Jackson is an independent jurist who adjudicates based on the facts and the law and not as a partisan. Time and again, she has demonstrated that impartiality on the bench, sometimes ruling in favor of the government, sometimes ruling against the government, sometimes ruling in favor of the individual, sometimes ruling in favor of the corporation. Her rule is simple: follow the law. Now, some think it noteworthy that a former judge appointed by a Republican president would enthusiastically endorse a nomination to the Supreme Court by a Democratic president. That reaction is a measure of the dangerous hyperpartisanship that is seeped into every nook and cranny of our nation's life, and against which the framers of the Constitution warned us. There should be nothing unusual about my support for a highly qualified nominee who has demonstrated through her life's work her commitment to the rule of law and an impartial judiciary. My former colleagues in the federal judiciary, Michael Ludig, Michael Chertoff, David Levy, and Andrew Guilford, each appointed by Republican presidents, and all highly respected judicial conservatives, have also voiced their strong support for Judge Jackson's confirmation. There was a time not so long ago when bipartisan support of the president's nomination of a highly qualified jurist was regular order. Antonin Scalia was confirmed by the Senate 98-0. Ruth Bader Ginsburg by a vote of 96-3. The rule of law is a fragile possibility in the best of times. Today, it is literally under attack in Ukraine and is threatened around the world and in our own country by autocrats and their sympathizers who give lip service to the rule of law but then work to undermine it at every turn. As Justice Scalia taught us so well for so long, an indispensable feature of the republic the Constitution created is an independent judiciary of judges who have taken an oath not to a president or a party, but to the American people and to God, that they will be impartial. Judge Ketanji Jackson Brown has demonstrated her unwavering commitment to that oath. I applaud this exceptional nomination, which I encourage the Senate to confirm. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Professor Lisa Fairfax.
Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and members of the Senate Judiciary, my name is Lisa Fairfax. I am a presidential professor of law at the University of Pennsylvania School of Law and co-director of its Institute for Law and Economics. Prior to my academic career, I worked at corporate and securities law at a large law firm. But before that, I was roommate and a very dear friend at Harvard College and Harvard Law School of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, who I am so very honored to introduce to you today and to the American people. Ketanji and I met during our first days of college nearly 35 years ago. Those first moments when you wonder if you belong. She's the friend that made sure we all did. A woman of deep faith in God and unyielding love for family, Ketanji defines friendship. She's the friend you're immediately drawn to for their outgoing and friendly nature. As our circle of friends grew, she's the one who became the rock for us all. Even though we are the same age, she is the role model who makes you believe in what she said. You can do it, and here's how. And she showed us how, by the power of her example of hard work, preparation, and excellence that transforms the seemingly impossible into the achievable. Together, we poured our souls into our studies, graduating college with honors and then doing it all over again when we enrolled and graduated law school with honors. We became sisters and saw each other's families as our own. We both met our husbands when we were students, and we were there for each other as we walked down the aisles, started our legal careers, and eventually our lives as working mothers. My husband, Roger Fairfax, now Dean of American University's Washington College of Law, has described Ketanji's impeccable credentials that's distinguished her at every level of her professional career. He also knows her as one of our children's most favorite people in the world. Our college roommate, Nina Simmons, a top corporate lawyer, has described Ketanji's unwavering work ethic. She puts her head down and gets it done, even and perhaps especially when no one is watching. Our other college roommate, Antoinette Coakley, a distinguished business law professor, has described Ketanji as a coalition builder. We knew early on that she could be anything she chose to be, but also that she seemed destined to be a judge because of her ability to see all sides and render fair and level-headed decisions. But our tight-knit group of girlfriends also knows that there's so much more to Ketanji beyond her brilliant mind. There's her wonderful sense of humor, her gift of storytelling, her heart of gold that always shows up. From the first call you make for advice about your career to the first knock you hear on the door after learning you're diagnosed with cancer. You never have to ask. She is always there. Above all, Ketanji is humble enough not to pretend she knows how to have it all. But she does know how to give it her all. And what she gives to her family, her friends, she also gives to the law and to this country. A testament of her character is all the people of different backgrounds and beliefs who understand that essence of Ketanji. We've seen that in her endorsements from bipartisan colleagues from the bench and the bar, and from both civil rights leaders and members of law enforcement. And we will see it in the history she will make. I know she is honored and humbled by the significance of this moment, not for what it means for her, but what it means for our amazing country. Confirmation of the idea that America is a place in which all of us can feel a sense of belonging, and all of us can reach our fullest potential. While challenging, I would summarize nearly 35 years of friendship in this way. By highlighting Ketanji's faith in God and country, her intellectual brilliance, her goodness and grace, and a work ethic that makes her perfectly suited for the serious task of serving on the Supreme Court. It is with tremendous pride, love, and gratitude for her willingness to serve that I introduce to you my dear friend and an exemplar of the best of America's promise, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Thank you.
Thank you both. Professor Fairfax and Judge Griffith, I'm sure that Judge Jackson and her family deeply appreciate your being here today and your kind words. I want to add to the list of introducers, the man sitting behind you, Senator Doug Jones, who has introduced Judge Jackson to many of us, not for the first time, maybe reintroduced it. But Doug, thank you for serving in this cause and for helping the President and Judge Jackson. Thank you all three for being here.
Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and distinguished members of the Judiciary Committee, thank you for convening this hearing and for considering my nomination as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. I am humbled and honored to be here. And I am also truly grateful for the generous introductions that my former judicial colleague, Judge Tom Griffith, and my close friend, Professor Lisa Fairfax, have so graciously provided. I'm also very thankful for the confidence that President Biden has placed in me and for the kindness that he and the First Lady and the Vice President and the Second Gentleman have extended to me and my family. Today will be the fourth time that I've had the honor of appearing before this committee to be considered for confirmation. Over the past 3 weeks, I have also had the honor of meeting each member of this committee separately, and I've met with 45 senators in total. Your careful attention to my nomination demonstrates your dedication to the crucial role that the Senate plays in this constitutional process, and I thank you. And while I'm on the subject of gratitude, I must also pause to reaffirm my thanks to God, for it is faith that sustains me at this moment. Even prior to today, I can honestly say that my life has been blessed beyond measure. The first of my many blessings is the fact that I was born in this great nation a little over 50 years ago in September of 1970. Congress had enacted 2 Civil Rights Acts in the decade before, and like so many who had experienced lawful racial segregation firsthand, my parents, Johnny and Ellery Brown, left their hometown of Miami, Florida, and moved to Washington, D.C. to experience new freedom. When I was born here in Washington, my parents were public school teachers, and to express both pride in their heritage and hope for the future, they gave me an African name, Ketanji Onyeka, which they were told means lovely one. My parents taught me that unlike the many barriers that they had had to face growing up, my path was clearer, so that if I worked hard and I believed in myself in America, I could do anything or be anything I wanted to be. Like so many families in this country, they worked long hours and sacrificed to provide their children every opportunity to reach their God-given potential. My parents have been married for almost 54 years, and they're here with me today. I cannot possibly thank them enough for everything they've done for me. I love you, Mom and Dad. My father, in particular, bears responsibility for my interest in the law. When I was 4, we moved back to Miami so that he could be a full-time law student, and we lived on the campus of the University of Miami Law School. During those years, my mother pulled double duty, working as the sole breadwinner of our family while also guiding and inspiring 4-year-old me. My very earliest memories are of watching my father study. He had his stack of law books on the kitchen table while I sat across from him with my stack of coloring books. My parents also instilled in me and my younger brother, Ketanji, the importance of public service. After graduating from Howard University, Ketanji started out as a police officer, following 2 of our uncles. After the September 11th attacks on our country, Ketanji volunteered for the Army and eventually became an infantry officer, serving 2 tours of duty in the Middle East. Ketanji is here today, providing his love and support, as always. And speaking of unconditional love, I would like to introduce you to my husband of 25 years, Dr. Patrick Jackson. I have no doubt that without him by my side from the very beginning of this incredible professional journey, none of this would have been possible. We met in college more than 3 decades ago, and since then, he's been the best husband, father, and friend I could ever imagine. Patrick, I love you. William, Patrick's identical twin brother, is here as well, along with his wonderful wife, Dana. Also here from Park City, Utah, are Patrick's older brother, Gardy, and his wife, Natalie. And last, but certainly not least, my very dear in-laws, the matriarch and patriarch of the Jackson family, Pamela and Gardner Jackson, have traveled here from Boston to be with me today. I'm saving a special moment in this introduction for my daughters, Talia and Layla. Girls, I know it has not been easy as I've tried to navigate the challenges of juggling my career and motherhood. And I fully admit that I did not always get the balance right. But I hope that you've seen that with hard work, determination, and love, it can be done. I am so looking forward to seeing what each of you chooses to do with your amazing lives in this incredible country. I love you so much. There are so many others who are not here today, but whom I need to acknowledge. I have a large extended family on both sides. They are watching from Florida, North Carolina, New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, Colorado, and beyond. I also have incredible friends. 3 of my college roommates came here today to support me, and I have so many other boosters from Miami Palmetto Senior High School, Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law School, and all throughout my personal and professional life. I've also had extraordinary mentors, like my high school debate coach, Fran Berger, may she rest in peace. She invested fully in me, including taking me to Harvard, the first I'd ever really thought of it, to enter a speech competition. Mrs. Berger believed in me, and in turn, I believed in myself. In the category of great mentors, it was also my great good fortune to have had the chance to clerk for 3 brilliant jurists, U.S. District Judge Patty Saris, U.S. Court of Appeals Judge Bruce Selya, and Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer. These extraordinary people were exceptional role models. Justice Breyer in particular, not only gave me the greatest job that any young lawyer could ever hope to have, but he also exemplifies what it means to be a Supreme Court justice of the highest level of skill and integrity, civility, and grace. It is extremely humbling to be considered for Justice Breyer's seat, and I know that I could never fill his shoes. But if confirmed, I would hope to carry on his spirit. On the day of his Supreme Court nomination, Justice Breyer said, quote, "What is law supposed to do, seen as a whole? It is supposed to allow all people, to live together in a society where they have so many different views, so many different needs, to live together in a way that is more harmonious, that is better, so that they can work productively together." End quote. I could not have said it better myself. Members of this committee, if I am confirmed, I commit to you that I will work productively to support and defend the Constitution and this grand experiment of American democracy that has endured over these past 246 years. I have been a judge for nearly a decade now, and I take that responsibility and my duty to be independent very seriously. I decide cases from a neutral posture. I evaluate the facts, and I interpret and apply the law to the facts of the case before me without fear or favor, consistent with my judicial oath. I know that my role as a judge is a limited one, that the Constitution empowers me only to decide cases and controversies that are properly presented. And I know that my judicial role is further constrained by careful adherence to precedent. Now, in preparing for these hearings, you may have read some of my more than 570 written decisions, and you may have also noticed that my opinions tend to be on the long side. That is because I also believe in transparency, that people should know precisely what I think and the basis for my decision. And all of my professional experiences, including my work as a public defender and as a trial judge, have instilled in me the importance of having each litigant know that the judge in their case has heard them, whether or not their arguments prevail in court. During this hearing, I hope that you will see how much I love our country and the Constitution and the rights that make us free. I stand on the shoulders of so many who have come before me, including Judge Constance Baker Motley, who was the first African-American woman to be appointed to the federal bench and with whom I share a birthday. And like Judge Motley, I have dedicated my career to ensuring that the words engraved on the front of the Supreme Court building, "Equal justice under law," are a reality and not just an ideal. Thank you for this historic chance to join the highest court, to work with brilliant colleagues, to inspire future generations, and to ensure liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Judge Jackson. Well, this is the end of the first day of the first 3 days, which are involving more personal, on a personal level, the senators on the Judiciary Committee. In a way, it's the easiest day because 10 minutes is merely a throat-clearing warm-up for most senators on this committee. Starting tomorrow, there'll be some serious exchange and questions of 30 minutes, and then the following day, 20 minutes for each senator to participate in this. We're looking forward to this opportunity to finally really give you a fulsome opportunity to respond to many of the things that you've heard and to answer direct questions. Members have until Thursday at 5 p.m. to submit questions for the record. We're going to reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to begin the 30-minute rounds of questions. We thank all the participants and members of our audience for keeping this dignified, respectful, and civilized, and we hope to continue that tradition tomorrow. With this, the committee stands adjourned. Thank you.
Gather around the table. Came here for Senator Padilla to translate his remarks.